Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and I'm not going to lie. Omaha's dining scene has so much going for it that I don't have too many occasions where I find myself needing to drive to Lincoln. But there are two places that I have driven to in Lincoln multiple times to go solely for that place, and that is Casa Bovina and the Mercato. Ironically enough, they're both located on the Certified Piedmontese campus. And while I would happily drive to Lincoln again for either one of those places, for one of them, now I don't have to. And today we get to talk to Andrew Novak. He is here from the Mercato Butcher Shop, which is open in Omaha now. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
I should say welcome back to the show because I had you and Colin Kent up on the show a couple years ago to talk about your pop-up, All in Time, which we'll touch on during this episode. But I do want to start off with Certified Piedmontese and with the Mercato. Now, just from a high level, I mean, they sponsored this show. I've talked a ton about Certified Piedmontese on here. I've had multiple people from Certified Piedmontese on this show. I'm a huge fan of the brand. But in case somebody's listening to this and is like, this is my first exposure to Certified Piedmontese, what makes this company and this breed of cattle different?
Well, you know my culinary background. I've played with a lot of beef in the kitchen, both Wagyu, now Piedmontese. I have a pretty good idea of what top quality beef would be. And I was singing the Wagyu song for years and years and years now, and here I am with a Certified Piedmontese shirt on. And I'm singing a whole new tune. This Piedmontese beef is such a special product. It is so full flavored, and let me emphasize, tender. And that's really the word for it. It is just such a beautiful, rich, beefy, tender beef.
It's a great way to put it. And the thing that's stunning is how healthy it is. Alongside just that flavor, like normally you have to sacrifice one of those two things. Not necessarily, but generally when one goes up, the other goes down. With Certified Piedmontese, it is just like full flavor, but basically like the macronutrients of salmon or something similar to that, which is just mind-boggling to
All
me.
the protein, less fat, but still beautifully full flavored. Mm-hmm. It's not lacking in that department. Mm-hmm. It eats right up next to prime beef all day long. Now, we don't grade through the USDA. We're not technically graded. But if the USDA graded on tenderness, I think we would be even a skosh above Wagyu. I really do. It's a special product.
What was your awareness of Certified Piedmontese before you started working for them? Like, is it starting to generate a little bit of buzz in kitchens?
Not as much as I'd like. I still think everybody's still on the Wagyu train, and I'd like to see a little transition towards, a grass-fed Piedmontese product. Like we're talking about, you don't need all that fat in your steak. In fact, you're going to feel a whole heck of a lot better after you eat it. You're not going to be all logy, holding your belly, saying, "Oh my goodness!" Like, oh, I might actually have dessert.
I've never heard the word logy before, but as soon as you said it, I knew exactly what it was.
I don't know if I could define it, but exactly. That's just how you feel.
Yes, everyone knows that feeling after a big lunch where you're just like, should I go back to the office or do I just need a nap? That's logy, I think.
Logy. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so let's talk about the Mercato specifically. So there are 3 locations of the Mercato now. The first one opened in Lincoln in 2020. Then one opened in South Lincoln, and now there's one in Omaha. And obviously, kind of the crown jewel of the Mercato is just that display case, displaying all the beef, all the Certified Piedmontese products.
Seeing that beautiful red beef.
Yes.
Never frozen, super fresh, locally sourced. We're a never, never, never program. This is no antibiotics, no hormones, no vaccines, ethically raised, grass-fed. How many good words can I put behind this,
Pretty good words there. But and we're definitely going to talk more about the beef, but I want to I want to lay out that this is more than just like going to, the butcher shop and saying, okay, give me, six steaks or whatever. You guys have seafood and pastas and freshly baked breads and condiments. And I mean, I'm sure you could describe it better than I can, but it is like when it's called the Mercato, like a market, that's very well described. This is more like going to the grocery store than just going to the butcher's section of the grocery store. There's a lot going on at the Mercato.
Yeah. I like to use the word boutique butcher shop. We carry a lot more than just beef, like you mentioned. We source all of our fresh baked bread from the bakery in Lincoln. That team does a great job. They're down the road. They're going to be doing pastries for us once we figure all of that out. They also make all of our gelato. I also want to reach out to some like local creameries and potentially carry some of their products. I have an opportunity to expand our product line. So I have a lot of coolers to fill, and I like to keep it as locally sourced as possible. I'll be in contact with a lot of local businesses in the near future to try and make this the best butcher shop it can be.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Omaha Mercato is still it's leveling up. It's finding its personality. Like when I visited about a month ago or so and picked up some awesome stuff. But you were telling me about some of the future plans and just what this place was going to look like. As we look at what the Mercato looks like when it's fully built out, like what can people expect when they come in?
Well, now that we have all of our permanent refrigeration, our freezers, the meat cases in, like I mentioned, our product line is going to expand substantially from what you saw. More cheeses, spreads. We are looking into a local cold pressed juice, and I spoke with a local chocolatier. I want to push Tony Incontro and Lucas Severson and their charcuterie that they're doing for Piedmontese. I want to carry their whole line and just have a beautiful charcuterie cooler. The sky's the limit right now. They're just waiting to be filled with whatever beautiful products, honestly, we would like to carry, which is really fun on my end because this is my first run at retail. I've never done anything like this before. I've been drinking from a fire hose. I really have been. It's been a crash course, jumping out of the kitchen and learning a whole new avenue in this industry. It's different.
I'm so curious, and we'll get into this more when we talk about your background, but what has that transition been like for you? Because I'm sure there are some pros where you're not just, on your feet cooking all the time. I'm sure the hours are a little bit more agreeable, but yeah, at the same time, it's something that's totally different. Like you're still in the food industry, but it's a totally different side of the food industry.
It is. It's learning how to learning your market and learning what on your shelf is, what the public is going to want to purchase. It's kind of hard to gauge what the community really wants, and you just have to figure out what your target market is and what's moving. I don't know. It's not grinding over a stove and trying like cooking for 200 people in a night, going home super sweaty and tired. It's going home and thinking and planning for the next day in an entirely different way. It's been a weird transition.
It's a different kind of stress.
It is. It's mental, less physical.
I know you're still new in this, and the Omaha location is still new, but when you talk about, figuring out what a market wants and, just trying to decipher like the market's personality, is there anything about the Omaha market that has surprised you, that stood out? Anything along those lines so far?
Omaha is not afraid to spend money on beef. That I definitely got into the right industry, or at least this avenue. Omaha, we are beef eaters. That is not a secret.
It's very, very true. Now, something that I'm really curious about, the main location of the Mercato, the one that's on Certified Piedmontese campus, every Friday does this thing called Fired Up Fridays, where not only can you come in and, get whatever meat or whatever meals you would want for throughout the week, but you can come in and it's almost like a pop-up restaurant every week. You obviously have significant pop-up background and experience. Is Fired Up Fridays something that we might see in Omaha as well?
Well, that's actually taken care of by the Ready to Eat Meal team. They do a fantastic job. You can actually find all their products in our coolers, like a take and microwave ready to eat meal. I haven't tasted one that's a miss. Those guys are talented. So you'll see all that advertised on our social media, and the plan is down the pipeline to have those Fired Up Fridays periodically in Omaha.
Nice.
If I were to spearhead one of those, that might be fun. I'd have to talk with those boys, but I don't want to take that away from them. That's their little thing.
Sure. I'm just excited to hear that it's going to be here because, that social media post gets sent out on Thursday and they're like, "Oh, we're serving Phillies today."
People get excited. I'm so surprised at how many folks have come through the shop and said, "Hey, you going to do that Fired Up Friday?" I hear.
It has quite the reputation now. Okay, so tease some taste buds here. Omaha is a beef town. We love our beef.
Yes, we do.
What are some of your favorite cuts or things that you would suggest if somebody's coming into the Mercato for the first time and they're like, "Andrew, be my Sherpa here. Direct me." Where are you pointing them towards?
I always like to direct people kind of off the beaten path. Everybody's had a ribeye. Everybody's had a New York strip, That's why when you walked in the shop and you said, "What would you like?" And I said, "Well, let me show you this hanging tender."
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Those steaks, yes.
And then you even sent me a message afterwards and you said, "Man, that steak ate like butter." It's because I know things. It's like, I almost don't want to talk too loudly about it because it's like there's only 2 that come off of every steer. So those are pretty special, but it's referred to as a butcher's cut because not everybody really knows about them. And that's why I like to introduce people to those cuts, or like a chuck eye. The center of the chuck, it eats just like a ribeye, but it's coming from a working muscle. It's going to receive more blood flow. It's still going to eat delicious and so tender. It might have a little more connective tissue in there, but I'd argue it even might be a little more full flavored.
Andrew, I think you might be good at this job.
I think I might be. I think I'm learning I'm not a bad salesman.
You're very good at describing and making this sound delicious. And on the non-meat side, I mean, you've told me previously the focaccia bread, and I've had it. I am a full supporter, but yeah, the focaccia bread is something that is worthy of legend. And I believe, oh man, I don't remember if this was you or if it was somebody else in the shop, but I'm giving credit to somebody. Somebody mentioned making a pizza out of it. Mm-hmm. Holy cow, that's a game changer.
It bakes up. You cut that bad boy in half. It bakes up like a pan pizza. It's pretty silly.
Phenomenal. So I want to get into your background here.
Okay.
How did you get into cooking originally?
Honestly, I started front of house. I was serving at the Olive Garden, 18 or 19 years old, out in Lincoln, and I absolutely hated it. And I saw how much fun the guys in the kitchen were having, and I'm a rare case, and I decided to actually ask the staff. I said, "Well, would I actually be able to work in the kitchen? I am miserable out here," and I honestly didn't enjoy it at all for a long time, to be perfectly honest with you. I worked in some large corporate kitchens, like the Olive Garden and Cheesecake Factory, until I had landed a position at Happy Hollow Country Club, and I had seen some wine dinners. And that is honestly what really inspired me. I was like, this is a different side of food. This isn't just turning and burning in a kitchen. There's some creativity behind this. There's thought. There's intent. And that's when I got enrolled in culinary school, actually. I'd spoken with my chef, Jason Hughes, and the sous chef, Juan Lupercio, very influential in my career. I credit a lot of just my basic cooking skills to Juan. I owe that man a lot. Juan, if you're listening to this, you're the man. But yeah, after that, it was just kind of full tilt in the food industry. I really did fall in love with it after that. And it's kind of funny. I just was grueling along until something had really clicked with it. And I said, wow, I'm going to actually make a career out of this.
So you mentioned, at Happy Hollow, like it was the creativity, it was the thoughtfulness that kind of sparked something new in you. I mean, is that something that you just recognize day one? Like you get in the kitchen and you're just like, whoa, these people, we're not just throwing out another chicken piccata or fettuccine Alfredo or whatever at Olive Garden, but there's intention here. There's like people are thinking about how this plate is getting put together. I guess what was it that really got those gears turning in your head where maybe this is something that I'm actually interested. It's not just a job, but like I like this
self-expression, seeing yourself in your food, right? Like having this idea and seeing it from start to finish. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's the best thing you've ever tasted. It's exciting. It's just lit a fire inside of me. It really did.
What do you think was your biggest takeaway from culinary school?
Culinary school. The funniest thing is they're going to teach you all of these techniques and, like very classical, very useful things. But as far as cookery, the actual application in the industry and like outside of school is when I did that sort of learning. But in school, I really started to kind of button down a little bit, learning how to deliver on time and, being accountable and, all of those things that people talk about with professionality and presenting yourself as a professional. I did a lot of growing up in that regard, on the other side of culinary school, I got thrown into the wild immediately. I was a sous chef at Monarch Prime and Bar for a year there. I helped Chef Patrick open that place up. And what a whirlwind. Oh my goodness. I wasn't ready for that. Literally my first day, I walked into the kitchen and they had just removed all of the old equipment. And I was standing there with Patrick looking down this absolutely bare kitchen. And he said to me, "Where do you think we should put everything?" Where do you think we should put things, Patrick? I'm learning here. But that's part of it. Fake it till you make it. I think that was a big part of it. It forced me to just throw myself into the fire. That's a big. I learned that way, I suppose. You just have to get in and get your hands in and get your hands on it and do it.
Well, and that's something that I think is really interesting because I feel like I've always kind of felt that, there's the two schools of thought of whether cooking school is something that should be necessary or if it's better to just learn by doing. And I feel like the more and more conversations I've had recently, it's tended more towards the latter, where, yes, you can definitely learn some great things at culinary school, but it's learning in the wild. It's jumping in and just... you just got to figure it out on the line sometimes. If you were to go back and do it again today, do you think you would tell yourself, yes, go to culinary school, or no, just get out there and do it?
Oh, I would go. 100%. Okay. I am in full support of that culinary school. They're incredible instructors. Like I had just an overall really fun experience.
And also, is this at Metro?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I figured, but wanted to confirm.
Yeah, I mean, there's some instructors that I still quote. I have some of their little ramblings that roll around in my head today. Like Chef Solberg, he's probably one of my favorite chefs that I've bumped shoulders with, and I'll just share like one fun story. There was
do it.
One day after fine dining, it was a really bumpy service, and he said, that wasn't exactly the way that things were supposed to go tonight, but let's cheer everybody up. And we did a blindfolded omelet cookery. No joke. We paired up and we put a blindfold on our partner and we had to walk them, guide them around the kitchen and start to finish. Go get the eggs, go get your bowl, whisk, spatula, butter, everything. And cook an omelet absolutely blind. And that was, just like those little experiences that you hold near and dear to your heart. I wouldn't take it back. No, I would definitely encourage anybody who's aspiring to be a chef. It's good for you. Get in school. Do it.
Okay. That's great. I love Metro, and I've had all kinds of chefs and restaurant owners on here that started there and have nothing but great things to say about it. So, yeah, I'm a huge supporter as well. Okay, so let's get into Monarch Prime. You mentioned it sounds like you almost felt like you were drowning at the beginning. It's just
we were.
What the heck are we supposed to do? like, how do you start a restaurant when you're at that point?
2 million ideas all being thrown at the wall at the same time. What sticks, you keep. What falls to the floor, you kick it down the road and you forget about it, and you just have to move forward. It was a huge learning experience, just getting the menu off the ground and getting our in-room dining service off the ground, because we were connected to Hotel Deco. So we had to figure all of that out. And then the banquet side of things, because we had a giant banquet hall on the other side that Jared Constantino was in charge of. And, just figuring out all. It's amazing how many pieces there are to lay down in that puzzle. And I'm going through it again here, opening up this butcher shop. It's amazing how many things come up, and we're again now in our quote unquote soft opening, official soft opening. There are things that are going to go wrong. You have to adapt and overcome. You just have to expect to experience some problems. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, opening a brand new restaurant versus opening a butcher shop, especially one that already has established locations, those are two very different things. But as you look back, are there things that you take from that opening of Monarch that, and maybe it's just lessons, maybe it's not just straight applications, but things that come up now where you're like, okay, I remember that. We're not going to do that again.
It's 100% just drawing from those experiences. And like I said, being able to adapt and overcome.
So I don't know if there was a gap, but the earliest that I could tell, at least from your social media, was working at the Boiler Room.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go straight from Monarch to the Boiler Room?
I did, yeah.
What drew you there?
Chef Tim. I staged one night, and he honestly offered me a job. I was very flattered. I was cooking on that line that first night, and I said, wow, this place is cool. As you know, the Boiler Room is an absolute...
It's phenomenal.
An absolute gem. And that's a direct result of Chef Tim Nicholson. I mean, he is an absolute savant. It's the only word.
He's been nominated for multiple James Beard Awards. I mean, the Boiler Room, anyone who's been, you know how special that place is. But what was it? I mean, you talk about he's the difference. What is it about him that specifically made him such a special chef to work for?
Oh, he's just a very patient man. He put up with all of our shenanigans, and I never saw that man yell once. He plays the disappointed father very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Oh, he knows how to run a kitchen, and I mean, he helped me move my stuff out of my apartment like 3 times over 5.5 years of working with that man. He's just a down-to-earth, good human being, and I think anybody that's come across his path would agree with me, or worked in his kitchen specifically. He's a very agreeable man to work for, and that restaurant is very reflective of that.
And what did that restaurant teach you from a culinary level?
Oh, man, it was just an absolute playground, especially once I'd spent enough time with Tim, and I learned what kind of cuisine that he wanted to present to Omaha, and I learned his style. He gave me a lot of freedom, especially towards the end there. I was his sous chef for about 1.5 years, and it's just a culinary playground. There are no no's at a certain point. There may be a point where you say, well, okay, maybe we're getting a little off the rails here, but that's a cool idea, and it takes you down another rabbit hole. And let's try this, let's try that. It's like I said, that self-expression. It's a powerful thing. It makes you feel really good when you have an epiphanous idea, and then you see it come to fruition. Wow, this is so beautiful and so delicious. It makes you feel good.
What's an example of that? An epiphanous idea?
My shirodashi maple glaze. I did a glazed bone-in pork belly course, first course when I was at Boiler Room. And to this day, it's hands down the most umami and delicious thing that I've ever come up with. It was just an idea, like, oh, can I reduce this maple syrup down to an even thicker syrup? And I'd been playing a lot with this shirodashi, and I stumbled across something magical. I shouldn't even be talking about it. I should. That's actually one of my rules. I have no secrets in the kitchen. I mean, if you want to know something, I'll tell you.
Well, keep going. I want to hear more about this thing.
What's another good one that I came up with over the years? Just my overall meat cookery, I'm pretty proud of. Having the opportunity to play with so many different proteins at the boiler room. Lamb, pork, beautiful pork from TD Niche, beautiful beef. Yes, Wagyu from Morgan Ranch. I'm not trying to talk against Piedmontese. I would...
Both can be great.
Exactly. Morgan Ranch is doing an outstanding job also. I won't take anything away from them. They're just two totally different animals, really. But learning how to work with every part of these animals and not just working with every part of them, but making them outrageously delicious and delectable.
When you came on the first time, you and Colin talked about something that I thought was really interesting, and it was that because Tim kind of gave you guys leeway and gave you guys some creative expression, that made you so much more dedicated as employees. I think it reduces turnover. It helps, when you're working those long hours on your feet. It creates better buy-in where you're not going to be, probably as angry or, as irritable or anything, because it's like, oh, this dude is listening to me. He cares about me. Can you just flesh that out a little bit more? What does it mean when a chef really says, I trust you by allowing you to put yourself on a plate?
It really speaks a lot of his character and his ability to build people up. And I think that's a big part of it is seeing that growth in his employees. That's a good word for it. And I'm sure he gets an outrageously amount of fulfillment of watching these chefs come from, all these different backgrounds and watching them grow and seeing their career and their culinary styles. He didn't even mention that to me. He would be like, you'll find your style. You'll find your style. It'll happen. And it did. I found myself, especially towards the end there when I was the sous chef and I was running the pass and I'm like, okay, I get to make a lot of calls here. I would notice my plates looked a lot different than Tim's. It's not that he's an outrageously talented plater. It's just two different people, two different perspectives. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd just be eating the same thing at every single restaurant.
Yeah, we're not all robots. Everyone is going to have their own personal expression and way to plate things. How would you describe your plating style?
Very. I liked a lot of even negative space. I would fill half the plate and then just leave the other half totally open, or just very, very little touches instead of trying to fill the whole space on a plate. Or I kind of like to color outside the lines a little bit, especially if we had some wide rim bowls, putting stuff on the rim and stuff. It's kind of like a culinary no-no. You don't put stuff on the rim, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna.
At what point did you start to recognize your plating style? I do these, as I'm plating things, I'm drawn to plating it this way, or I find myself, doing these certain things.
If I wanted to take a picture of it afterwards, I knew I felt good about it. There were those moments I had to have to pause in the past and say, all right, that looks pretty hot. I like that,
I'm so curious about working in an open kitchen, because one of my favorite things, the boiler room is amazing. You could put me in a pitch black room and serve me that food and I would have an amazing meal. But one of my favorite things about the restaurant is it's not only an open kitchen, but it's on the first floor of the restaurant, and you can sit on the second floor and watch everything that's happening. And it for a food nerd like me, it is mesmerizing to watch how calm everything is. And it seems like everything has purpose. Nobody is wasting movement. Tim is just doing his thing at the pass. There's not yelling. There's not running around. I'm sure that there are moments of that. And I'm sure that, there's
controlled chaos.
Yeah, there's some
everybody's feeling it in the inside.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some stuff that happens behind the curtain. But what is it like to work in an open kitchen like that?
I actually found it just made me a sharper chef. Just that self-awareness at all times. Like, oh, we're being watched. This is a show. There's no cussing. There's no, like you have to stay professional and clean and keeping your station sharp. It just all around just made me a more efficient and just stronger chef every day.
Just a whole nother level of accountability.
That's a good word for it. Yeah, and you're in the public's eye. It makes you think about how every little touch. Oh, I just touched raw meat, or like this should be staying in a cooler because it needs to stay really cold, and just being super mindful of all those P's and Q's.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about All in Time, which was your pop-up with Colin Kentop. He's unfortunately no longer with us, but was a great cook, and from what I understand, a great man.
Yeah, I miss that guy. He was an incredible human, and I'm very thankful for any and all time that I got to share with him. He's alive in my heart.
Yeah,
in all of our hearts. I mean, he touched a lot of people. He was a good guy.
Absolutely. Running that pop-up, I mean, we've talked about how much creative expression you had at the Boiler Room, but I mean, when you're doing your own pop-up, everything's yours. It is ultimate creativity.
It's literally both terrifying and exciting. I mean, you're at the mercy of the public.
What was All in Time? I guess it's still kind of active. Your last pop-up was April 19th, so it's been a while. But like, what's the concept if you're describing All in Time to someone?
Well curated, upscale sandwiches. We just really loved sandwiches. It's a really open template. You can make a sandwich taste basically like anything. There are thousands of sandwiches in the world. We just wanted to execute them at the best level. Take all of the attention to detail that we had learned in the fine dining and apply that to sandwiches.
What's your favorite sandwich?
Oh, the Cubano. Cubano all day. It's a perfect sandwich.
It really is. I think, that would probably be in my top 3 as well. Yeah, very, very tough to beat. What's the best Cubano you made? Like, at All in Time, would it just be traditional Cubano, or would you play with it and do, like, some fusion?
Oh, we did a little fusion. We saved all... we actually did a little Cubano pop-up, and we saved all of the braising liquid from braising off our pork butt. We clarified it and made a consommé, and did kind of like a French dipper birria meets a Cubano kind of thing. It was fun. I'd never seen anybody serve a sidecar consommé with a Cubano.
Sounds awesome.
It wasn't bad.
You've talked about, how important that time with Colin was, especially now, that he's no longer here, and you get a chance to look back and have those memories. How important are those memories to you?
Oh, I mean, I reflect on that a lot. It's some of the best times of my life were with that guy, and yeah, doing pop-ups is hard. That is no secret. We were working hard doing that. That's kind of why I've been doing fewer of them lately. It's a taxing experience, start to finish, especially when you're working full time. But I'm feeling more energetic nowadays. I've been wanting to sink my teeth into some more of those experiences again. Like, I undeniably have more energy, not working 12 to 12 and grinding in the kitchen all day. So I'd expect to see some more pop-ups out of me. Stay tuned.
Well, that's exciting.
Especially with this Piedmontese beef. I think that would be a great way to promote the company I'm working for, and also maybe make a little side money. Never hurts.
Sounds like a win-win to me.
Right.
So I would assume probably 95%, if not higher, of the people listening to or watching this have never executed a pop-up themselves, planned a pop-up, anything like that. You just talked about how hard it is. Now, obviously, I'm not asking you to go into every detail because we'd be here for hours, but like, what makes running a pop-up difficult? What are the things behind the scenes that us as diners, when we come and we just grab a sandwich and we're like, oh, this is so great. What are we not experiencing?
Nobody realizes how much work goes into just moving food around. You go shop for it, you put it in your car, you move it into a refrigerator, you move it when you're when you're prepping it, and then it goes into a fridge to cool down, and it goes into squeeze bottles, and how many times that you handle that food before it actually hits a plate. And how many different kitchens, like, are you using a commissary kitchen, or are you using your kitchen at home? Like that we did a pop-up, Colin and I did a pop-up, and we literally took every drawer out of our kitchen, our refrigerators at home, and there wasn't a square inch inside of these refrigerators. I mean, it was just stuffed to the gills. People don't realize how much food it takes to feed, upwards of 150 when you're 150, 200 people. It's a ton of food.
And how do you know, like, how many to prepare for?
That comes just with experience, know, like just understanding how much your average diner is going to eat, and like what you're putting on a sandwich. That just comes with doing it over and over and learning how it's going to all unfurl as you move forward.
Favorite all-in-time memory?
Favorite all-in-time memory? Oh, that's a good question. Probably doing our brunch pop-up at the Flatiron. We were the first people to be in there since they had shut down.
Yep.
And just that day in general, it was just filled with all friends and family. That was ironically the last pop-up I did with Colin. So at least we went out on a good note,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you worked at Boiler Room for several years.
Five and a half.
5.5. That's even more than I thought. I mean, that's a good run in one restaurant.
That just goes to show you how excellent of a place it was to work,
Right. So how did the opportunity with Certified Piedmontese and the Mercato arise?
I don't know if you're familiar with Lucas Severson. He was our prep cook when I had first started there. He did all of the pig butchery. And he had transitioned to Piedmontese to go work at the Mercato. I believe at the 84th Street location. He was there for a couple of years. Now he's doing all of the Encontro charcuterie with Tony Encontro. So very happy for them. They're finally getting all that off the ground. But he heard that they were opening a store in Omaha and said, Andrew, you should throw your hat in the ring. And here I am sitting in front of you.
I mean, we're talking, I think you said you were 19 when you started at the Olive Garden.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking your whole professional life has been in restaurants. When Lucas brings this opportunity to you and it's like, well, you can be in the food industry, but not in restaurants. What was your first reaction?
It was kind of I won't lie, the idea of reducing the workload a little bit physically. I'm 32 and I'm like dealing with carpal tunnel that just comes with, handling a knife for hours and hours and hours. It's like, yes, like it's a physically demanding job. There is no secret to that. You'll talk to any longtime chef and they'll say, yeah, my back hurts, So having a little pullback from, the workload physically and seeing more time in my personal life. Like I've been doing some Frisbee golfing and seeing my friends and going to seeing a lot more live music, things that I enjoy. It's nice. I'm not just married to a kitchen anymore.
I think that's something that a lot of diners don't understand is just the time that is required to work at a restaurant, especially one that is of high quality as like the Boiler Room. I mean, yes, there's service from whatever 5 to 11 or whatever it might be, but you've got to do prep work and mise en place before you are actually working. Then you work on the line, which, like you said, is a very physically demanding job, and then afterwards you have to clean up. I mean, it is, and you don't get a ton of holidays off. You don't get weekends off. Weekends are when you're most busy. So I mean, it is a job that can really consume a giant chunk of your life, right?
It's demanding. I'd refer to it as a labor of love.
Yes.
You have to like it. You really do. That's why it burns so many people out. And they see it, they think it's something they would want to do, but then they don't really understand how taxing it really can be. Because even outside of just the physical aspect of it, there's the other side of the self-expression, you're putting yourself out to the public. And there are times, I didn't like that. I didn't have a good experience. And then that lands right back on you. That's that's hard. Just coping with that kind of stress. You're not going to please everybody. That's impossible.
Right. But now that's less of a burden on you. I want to. What are your responsibilities with the Mercato?
So I am the official store manager of the Omaha location. I'm scheduling. I've been doing all of my own hiring, which has been pretty fun. I've been hand selecting all of my employees. Very blessed so far. I have a very cool staff. I'm in charge of ordering. I've lately been expanding our merchandise. Been talking with Krista and our merchandising specialists and figuring out what we actually want to put on shelves, which has been pretty fun. Just going through ordering guides and saying, "Ooh, this looks good. That looks good. Yeah, do it. Let's buy it." I think the public would like that. So, yeah, whole new bag of responsibilities. It's, yeah, that's it.
Other than being able to like perfectly describe meat like you did earlier in this episode, because that's an obvious crossover.
Because I care. I love meat. I am a carnivore.
Tell me about that. Why? Like what is it about meat that draws you in so strongly?
Especially the butchery side of it. It's just something I've always enjoyed, breaking down and processing these animals and learning how to use every little piece of that animal and honor that animal. It's almost primal. That's a good word for it.
I like that. Yeah. Is there anything about working in kitchens that you miss right now?
The camaraderie, the connection between, even between front and back of house, but especially that connection between your kitchen staff. That's deep. That's a family. Like, that's just something that comes from being in the fire day in and day out and understanding like we're all here together and we're one team, one dream, that whole spiel. That's a very, very strong thing. It's a family outside of your family. And I think that's why it draws a lot of people in, a lot of misfits and, motley crew. We all fit in together.
Now, before you started working at the Mercato, you had a little bit of a crossover while you were still at the boiler room. I know that you're interested in bread baking, and you've done a lot of bread baking, and you did some bread work for Clean Slate Food Company as well.
Very close with Jamin and Dylan and Amanda, Colin, Adrian. Yeah, I can name their whole staff.
Great people, and I want to talk about them real quick. But what is it about bread? Like you just talked about what makes you love meat. What is it about bread that draws you in?
Again, that's just. I think everybody should know how to bake a loaf of bread. That should just be an innate skill.
Human 101.
Right. Like you should be able to sustain yourself. It's amazing how little ingredients go into a loaf of bread and how exceptionally delicious it can be. Water, flour, salt, yeast, thyme, that's like little sourdough. Boom. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's a miracle.
I don't really even know how to describe it, but there's this feeling of satisfaction that comes from making and eating your own bread. Like bread is great, but I've had times like I've found this hamburger bun recipe that I like to go to, or my wife makes this amazing soda bread, Irish soda bread, excuse me. We've made a couple other types of breads, and when you eat bread that you've made, like it's not like even like taking meat that I've cooked or anything like that, but it's like, yeah, I made this bread. This is mine. I don't know what that feeling is, but it is like
pride. It's pride, but that's okay.
Maybe that's it.
It feels good. You say, hey, I made this and it tastes good. All right.
So I know that, you just mentioned you had a lot of hookups and a lot of friends at Clean Slate Food Company, which is
everybody support them. They're great people.
Fantastic people. They've been on the show. I really, really like those guys. They've got a cafe down in Millwork Commons.
You can actually taste some of my bread recipes in there. I helped them get their bread program off the ground.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Tell me about that. How did you get connected there? Because you were still working at the boiler room full time when you were doing this.
Yeah, that was just on my Mondays off. I would go and just hang out with Jamin and Dylan and put our heads together. They gave me kind of a loose idea of what they wanted, like ciabatta and milk buns. They wanted some sourdough. And I said, okay, well, let's make some unique recipes. And I had some jumping off points, and we made them, unique to their cafe, so that I wasn't biting on anybody's recipes. I wanted them to have a unique and totally, like a clean slate cafe.
Their own bread.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's their bread.
It was fun, honestly, just for me, just to learn the logistics, not only just to how to like take these recipes and scale them out, but how do we keep this bread fresh? How and like over a week time, does it even make sense for us to do this? Is it going to be something that costs too much money? And like figuring out those sides of things. Also, it's not just making bread; you got to make money on it,
And how did that experience? How does that help you now in your current role? Not like bread making specifically, but some of the logistics that you just mentioned. I'm sure that there's some carryover into this job at the Mercato.
100% costing and retail markup and all of that. It is a business. We have to make money.
Favorite type of bread to make?
Favorite type of bread to make. I had a lot of fun making ciabatta, especially like big batches of ciabatta. There was, I think the biggest batch I made was like a 10,000 gram batch. It filled this giant Lexan, and after my third fold and after my bulk fermentation, I mean, this thing was just teeming over the top of it, and I was shaking it and just watching this enormous mass of fermenting dough wiggle around. There's something just satisfying to watch it.
I really wish that there was video of that. Like,
I might have it somewhere. I might have it somewhere. Maybe it might even be on my Instagram page.
Ooh.
It might be.
Okay, I'm going to have to go back and check that when we're done here. Is there a bread that you really want to master and just haven't yet?
Master?
Maybe master's not the right word, but just a bread that you've really wanted to get down and you just you haven't quite nailed it yet.
I've always really wanted to play around with some braided doughs. It's just something I've never done. It's not something I think I'm incapable of, but doing some really cool decorative like chalas and stuff like that, I think would be a fun thing to pin down.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll get you out of here on 2 questions that I like to ask just about everybody who comes on the podcast. The first one is, what is one thing that you feel like diners don't understand about the restaurant industry that you wish they did understand?
Be kind to your restaurant staff. It's a stressful industry. I suppose that's maybe not so unknown, but it's hard mentally, physically. It's a day in and day out thing. It's a commitment to be a part of this industry. Sure, we're making money, but it's a sacrifice for sure. I think that's something that everybody should be aware of. You're going out and you don't have to do those dishes. You have people doing that for you. You didn't have to lift a finger. That meal was made for you. You should be appreciative of that,
Well, I think, and I agree with you completely, but I think like when people go out to eat, they, especially at a restaurant like the Boiler Room, it's a celebratory experience.
Yeah.
And so they're thinking, I shouldn't have to do anything. Nothing should go wrong. And if anything does, my celebration is being stepped on. And it's not like that at all. I think if we just be kind to one another and be patient. Yeah.
We're all human. We're all spinning on the same rock.
Yes, definitely. And what is your favorite thing about being a part of restaurant and now just food in general, just the food industry?
One more time?
Just favorite thing about being a part of the food industry.
Oh, favorite thing about being part of the food industry. I think I had mentioned it before. That sense of camaraderie and that sense of family that just comes with, that day-to-day grind, being in those uncomfortable situations together, getting through it and saying, hey, we're a team. Like, we did this together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Andrew, I want to thank you for...
Yeah, thank you, Dan. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you for many years of great meals at the Boiler Room and now what you're doing with Certified Piedmontese and the Mercato. I mean, it's just so cool to see this market come to life. There's so much good stuff there. I'm already excited to come in again and have you show me some new awesome cuts that I didn't even know existed and are just going to delight me and my friends. So, yeah, people, definitely go check out the Mercato.
Do it.
I mean, it's no secret. I'm a huge fan of certified Piedmontese, whether it's served to me in a restaurant, whether I'm just buying it and cooking it myself. It's one of those things that you can't screw up. Even a dummy like me can make a good steak or something when they're cooking with a product this good. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
And Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.